Good evening, everybody, and welcome to another edition of 108 Stitches Baseball Talk. I got the entire crew back. Yes, I do. Rick Curdy, welcome back to the show.
Thank you, Scott. Miss you guys.
Yeah, we missed you too. Eric Katz, I don't miss you. I see you every week. You've been A1 all month, man.
Thank you.
A1 for August. He's going to go 4 for 4 in the attendance. He's been really good job, man. Good job, Mr. Concrete Dump.
Thank you.
Your work is greatly appreciated. And of course, L Square. What can I say? Welcome back, buddy.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, before we get into all our juicy topics here tonight, Rick's been traveling for a couple weeks. He didn't get to chime in on one of the topics we know he'd love, and that was the Oakland A's attendance and maybe one of the acts. Maybe it was a little 18-plus act going on in the stands during one of the games, too. I'm not sure if you saw or about that, Rick, but please come on in, talk about that attendance, and maybe if you feel like it, and make a comment or two about that interesting act that happened out there in the stands.
Yeah, I heard about that. That was crazy, and doesn't surprise me with what the Oakland, not athletics, the Oakland pathetics, because that's what their attendance has been. It's been pathetic. Their minor league baseball team draws more attendance than their professional MLB team. What does that tell you? Not even Brad Pitt or George Clooney or Moneyball or Elon Musk money can save this pathetic franchise. And the fans are tired of it. They're not coming to the games. They're doing things up in the stands now to entertain themselves. It's crazy stuff going on there. It's just time for. We all know that Oakland is done. They're going to go to Las Vegas. I've been saying this for years. People getting mad at me. I have friends in the South Bay area mad at me. And I'm like, I'm just a messenger. They're going to go to Las Vegas. We all know that. The attendance stinks to high heaven. It reminds me so much of the Cleveland Indians, or I can't say that anymore, but the Cleveland team at Municipal Stadium, and they had like 5,000 people, and this thing was like an 80,000 seat stadium, and the Indians were horrific, just like the Athletics are horrific. So Billy Beane, Brad Pitt, whoever is in charge, get rid of the team, move them to Las Vegas. We all know that they're going to go to Las Vegas. They know they can support professional sports. Move the Oakland Pathetics and make it back to the Las Vegas Athletics and bring some pride back into that organization. Pride of Raleigh Fingers and all these great Reggie Jackson, all these great athletics players. Tony La Russa. Bring some pride back into the organization. Get them out of Oakland. It's a dumpster fire. It stinks. And put them in Las Vegas where they can, in a beautiful stadium where people will love them and support them as their own. And bye-bye Oakland Pathetics and hello Las Vegas Athletics.
Well, clearly, I think Rick has some strong feelings on that Oakland situation. So, Rick, thanks so much for sharing. Guys, the first topic I want to talk about here tonight, Eric, I'll come to you on it first, is the new MLB schedule for 2023. Basically, the breakdown, for those who don't know, is each team's going to play 52 games against their divisional opponents now. That is a 24-game decrease from the 76 games that's been going on for all these years. 26 home games, 26 road games within the division. Where it really changes the most, the schedule's interleague play. Prior to 2023, teams were playing 20 interleague games. That's now up to 46 entering next year. So that is going to be very different. And I got to say, before I turn it to you, Eric, I love it. I think it really makes things more balanced. Teams are not going to be able to benefit as much from being in the weaker divisions like the NL Central and AL Central of this year, the AL East and the NL East, which are tough divisions, certainly top-heavy divisions, going to get a bit of a break, play some more weaker teams. I think this is very well done by MLB, and really it's all thanks to the universal DH, because with that universal DH, you can play more interleague games, not having to have the pitchers bat in the NL. All around, really good stuff, I think. What say you, Eric?
I love it. I mean, it just gets redundant playing your division multiple times over. I mean, it's just the same game, same old thing every time. Like, it's like it's even the Yankees Red Sox rivalry kind of lost its luster because of that. Just because, they'd be on ESPN so often. ESPN's begging for a fight to happen. But I love it because it means we get to see opponents that they just very seldom play each other. Like, for example, two of the biggest market teams in baseball, the Yankees and the Dodgers. That's going to be awesome in June when the Yankees head to Dodger Stadium. I just think we get a throwback of those series because the Yankees and Dodgers haven't played in a really long time. And I personally am all for it, especially with them playing like against teams that they had legendary series with, like the Yankees and the Cubs, or even for example the Dodgers and the Royals, or whomever. I think it's personally great for the game that we get to see opponents play each other. It's better than just playing your division like 70 plus times a year, which just gets redundant.
It definitely gets redundant. And you mentioned Dodgers. I mean, I'd like to see Dodgers Red Sox. They played in the World Series a few years ago. Dodgers Astros, lots of heat there from that World Series where the Astros, so everyone thinks they cheated. They admitted to it kind of a little bit, at least. So I think that's a good call. I think fans being able to see more players. I mean, how often do you get big names like a Trout and Ohtani, let's say, for the Angels going to Washington and into Miami and into Cincinnati and to see in Wrigley and in Pittsburgh and in Colorado or in Arizona, whatever it might be, getting, some of the big stars out there. I think it actually helps grow the game and market the game, something that I think MLB has really failed at over the years as well. Scott, what do you think about all this? Is this good for the game? Is there anything you can think of that's not good about this?
Well, great. And folks, just so you know, I'm only going to be talking about 2 topics tonight, and this is one of them. So that's good stuff, because I'll leave it to these guys to take it from there. Number one, I always wanted an interleague play as a kid when I was in high school a lot of years ago, and thankfully it ultimately came to fruition. Number 2, playing a team 18, 19 games in a year, way too much. I don't care. That's item number 2. Item number 3, you're right. Okay. MLB will follow in the suit of the National Hockey League, NBA, where they all get to see each other. Of course, they don't have home and homes, but they'll probably rotate every year. So I think it's great for the game. So everything is right about it. Again, the universal designated hitter, when they ultimately expand, then you have 32 teams versus 30 now. It'll even be a little bit better. So you've got 2 of the 3 sports that are able to have some sort of interleague play all year. And I know baseball will fine tune it, but you're right. I mean, the reality is you're looking to grow the game is what you're looking to do. And everybody should at least see all their players every year or every other year, which is how it's going to work out. 1 year you're here, then the next year you go back, and that's what it's all about. You want to see all the best stars. As much as everybody likes the Yankees and the Red Sox 18, 19 times a year,
you don't need to see it that much. No,
right?
You get enough of it from 12 to 14 games. And one of the biggest things for me is really the biggest gain here is the balance, because again, it's so easy to look at the Astros and Mariners getting to beat up on Texas, Oakland, and Anaheim. It's so easy to look at Cleveland right now. Even the Twins, who are the second best team in that division, aren't good. Cleveland's probably the 8th best team in the American League, but they're going to be a top 3 seed because of their division. And you look at the AL East. Obviously, we expected Baltimore to be the worst team. Right now, it's Boston. I can make an argument for Boston to be in second place in a number of divisions.
All right, comment from the chat room real quick, okay? Trevor Hillstrom, great for the fans who buy tickets. So there you go. So yeah, he's just validating what we already are.
Shout out to Trevor. I work with him. He's one of the great guys on my baseball staff over at drroto.com. So thanks for tuning in, Trevor. Thanks for the comment. Rick, what are all your thoughts on this? I mean, I know we've covered pretty much everything we can, but I am interested to see, you are Mr. Opinion, and I'd like to see if you actually have a negative to this.
No, I mean, I'm happy for it because it seems like the Major League Baseball is actually listening to their fans, because, before, to see the top stars play against each other, it had to be an all-star game, or it had to be a World Series or something like that. And now people get to see like Aaron Judge going to Dodger Stadium. I love to see that. I'm tired of seeing the Dodgers.
If he ends up with the Giants, he'll be there a lot more.
Yeah, or maybe the Mets. Who knows what will happen to him? That'll be interesting. But I'm tired of seeing like the Pirates versus the Dodgers and all these all these games that are, the Nationals versus the Braves. Like, who cares about these games? We want to see like the best of the best face each other. I grew up in Los Angeles. I love the Freeway Series with the Angels and the Dodgers. and hopefully, Angels will get a new owner, and hopefully they'll be competitive with the Dodgers. That'll be fantastic for Los Angeles. But this early play, I think it's going to be great. I think it's going to be fun. It's going to bring more fans back, and people will be like, "Oh wow, Aaron Judge is coming to Wrigley Field," or "Oh wow, Mike Trout to with the Reds." It's just going to be exciting baseball to see. So I think everybody's going to be great. And it'll be an all-star game all year round. So all these other games that are meaningless, they're going to be more competitive games. And so it's good. And anything that grows the game in a positive direction, I'm all for.
Yeah, and we'll talk about these divisional races and these wild card races coming up a little bit later on the show, but I don't want to take anything away from the Mets and the Braves. They're both obviously very talented teams and very talented rosters. I know the Phillies are there, but it's a big advantage to get to play the Marlins and the Nationals so often. I mean, their records are indicative of that. I know they'd still be good teams, they'd still be playoff teams, but if you switch them with the Red Sox or the Orioles, let's say, their records wouldn't be as good. Let's just face it, they wouldn't be. And if you put the Mets or something in the AL Central, they'd have 110 wins already. So yeah. It's crazy how, I guess, unbalanced the schedule is right now. It won't be, are you just the best team in your division? It will actually be, are you one of the best teams in baseball? Because you will have to play everybody. And just because you have a weaker opponent, I mean, the Yankees had 2 games against the Mets, and I'm like, oh, they'll probably get swept. Hopefully they can take 3 or 4 from the A's. They sweep the Mets, split with the A's. So just because it's, one good team versus a bad team doesn't always make a difference. When you're unfamiliar, sometimes those bad teams can actually pull out a big win or two as well. So it really does change things a lot for me. That's what I have to say on it. Eric, Scott, Rick, you guys have anything else on this topic?
I think that we'll get a clearer picture on what the postseason is going to look like. I think that, it means division games will mean more. And because now instead of playing the 70+ games they play a year against the division, home, away, whatever, multiple times a year, it's cut down now. So that means those division games are going to be crucial, like they're September.
Good stuff, great stuff. I want to remind everyone, subscribe to the South Florida Tribune on our YouTube channel. Visit www.southfloridatribune.com. Follow us on Twitter at Tribune South. And to advertise, you can call 954-304-4941. Audio portion of the show can be heard on Spotify, Spreaker, iHeartRadio, iTunes, Apple, Google, whatever it is, wherever you get your apps and your podcasts and everything from, get it there. 108 Stitches Baseball Pod. And of course, the South Florida Tribune.com. Let's move things over to pitching injuries.
The only thing I'm going to add to it, and I mentioned this earlier, Lou, is good riddance to too many divisional games. That's all. Too many, just overkill. And
all right.
All
right, Scotty. That boy. Pitching injuries. You saved that voice up for your Willie Mays, all right?
You got it, pal.
Over to some pitching injuries. Houston Astros. Starting pitcher Justin Verlander, relief pitcher Ryan Presley. Houston, such a great standing right now that they kind of are fortunate in this situation because they can take it easy with these guys. They don't have to rush them back. They can really wait, make sure they're 100% for the playoffs because both guys are incredibly important for the Astros come playoff time. If they want to go to the World Series, we know they're a favorite to do that. They need their ace in Justin Verlander. They need their top reliever in Ryan Presley. Verlander is not just their ace, possible frontrunner for AL Cy Young. A lot of teams don't have the ability to wait for these guys, maybe give them an extra week. They, almost need to rush them back just to get into the postseason. Houston's really positioned themselves well. Certainly not good news to see these guys going down if you're Astros fans, but definitely in an advantageous position are the Houston Astros. What do you think, Rick?
Yeah, I think it's, they could rest them. The Astros have been playing great, lights out. I've been coming on here saying Aaron Boone is going to be manager of the year. I think it's going to be Dusty Baker. He's just been in there and done a great
Brandon
job.
Hyde in Baltimore, man.
And
it's gotta be Brandon Hyde.
Yeah, it has to be.
We'll see. But
or my old friend who should have been fired 5 months ago, Scott.
Yeah, there you go. He's probably going to get a contract extension now. So But yeah, I think they could rest them. They're playing great. They're one of the favorites to win. Verlander to me is my American League Cy Young. He's my American League Comeback Player of the Year. He's just been phenomenal. I'm
If
just
not for
very
Otani and Judge, he could
impressed.
be MVP too.
Absolutely, and he's
Yeah.
won an MVP when he was with the Tigers. So who
His
knows?
season statistically, you want to know something crazy? This year is actually better than that season.
That's
in
amazing.
in every area except for strikeouts.
That's amazing. I mean, he's just a phenomenal pitcher. He's a first ballot Hall of Famer. So it's good to rest him because the Astros kind of, like you said, kind of take it easy, see what happens. They've been playing great, and so it's not a bad thing for the Astros. Kind of maybe a good thing because maybe they need some rest for the playoffs. Or if they get to the World Series, we'll see what happens.
But it also has opened up a spot in the rotation so they can make some decisions on who might be part of that playoff rotation. It bumps Neris and Montero into more high leverage situations, which could get those guys more ready for a postseason as well. So all around, I think it's almost good news. But of course, you don't want them to be too serious because these guys will be necessary. They will definitely be needed. Eric, obviously, we don't like Verlander or the Astros as Yankees fans, but we got to admit they probably are the favorites in the American League, not without Verlander and Presley, though.
Oh, no doubt. I mean, they got a terrific lineup. They've been playing great ball all year, and they just, right now with the division lead they have, I don't think Seattle has the firepower to come back up that high. I think that, it's best to them to just let them just get back to 100% or even better. And just go with it. I mean, now they can really get some young guy. You can get some guys in there and see how they are when baseball really matters here coming in September. And you'll be able to see also potentially some young guys in there. Are they a part of the future of the Houston Astros? Because Justin Verlander can't defy father time forever.
No, I don't think he can, although I do think he's on a 2-year deal, so I think he will be back next year. It's just incredible what he's done after missing all that time and at the age that he's at. I mean, I guess he's the MLB version of Tom Brady in a sense, obviously not with all the championships, but in
the drama, less
the
drama.
odds. Yeah, but they also both have incredibly beautiful wives as well.
Kate Upton.
Yeah. So
Get up.
that is some good stuff there. Let's move over to the Dodgers. They have some injuries pitching wise as well. Blake Trinan is expected back, but it's more so Gonsolin and Buehler that I want to kind of focus on here. Gonsolin will be back as well. Buehler, of course, won't be. Dodgers are playing incredible baseball. They have a chance to win 115, 116 games in the regular season at their current pace. There's no question about how good they've been. The question is what it always is. Can they perform in October? They typically don't. Come playoff time without Buehler, that's a big time loss for the Dodgers. Gonsolin having an unbelievable season, probably second behind Sandy Alcantara in the Cy Young Award voting right now. He's been that good. Can he really be counted on as an SP1 or SP2 in the postseason, especially with teams like the Mets or the Braves having such elite arms? I mean, if you're the Dodgers and you're going up against the Mets with DeGrom and Scherzer and then even Bassett, Carrasco, I'm not sure that Urias Gonsolin is really what you feel so great about going into a 7-game series with, Rick.
Yeah, I'm a Dodger fan. I was out there. They're scalding red hot. Everyone loves them out there. But yeah, the Buehler one, he ain't gonna be back till 2 years because he had another Tommy John surgery, which is very, very concerning. And Gosling's hurt, so we'll see what happens. And I do get nervous when they're in the playoffs because Dave Roberts does some boneheaded moves, in the playoffs or does something. So they have to win the World Series this year. There's no doubt about it. I mean, they won one, but people are going to say it's during the bubble, during the pandemic, they only played 50 games. It doesn't really count, and I can see why people say that. They have to win the World Series this year. If they don't, they're going to be the Buffalo Bills.
I'm not really sure they're built to win the World Series, though. I think they're built to win 110 to 120 games in the regular season. But without Walker Buehler, I'm really not sure they are built to win.
I just hope they don't become like the Mariners and tie the record for most wins and then go to the playoffs and absolutely flame out. So I'm a little concerned, but they've been red hot. And, it's hard to say this, Yankee fans, but Joey Gallo has been, he's the MVP of the National League.
X Factor for the Dodgers, though, guys. Clayton Kershaw. What are you going to get from Clayton Kershaw? Can he step up? Because if Clayton Kershaw's healthy and can step up, suddenly you feel a little better about that rotation come playoff time.
And stop with Joey Gallo, Curdy. Let's just see if you
AL
can act.
MVP. He's the AL MVP.
Well, let's see, Rick, if you can actually win it in a legit year, not this coronavirus shortened season.
We'll
I
win
want
it.
to see you. No, when you lose a guy like Walker Buehler, I'm not so sure. Besides, Roberts prior to 2020 had to be the biggest choke in baseball
I agree.
next to Dusty Baker.
I agree with them. I said I've been saying about Mike Scioscia for 5 years, and I hope Mike Scioscia gets there. But the Dodgers have to win it. It's a winner miss. If they don't win it, they're going to be the Buffalo Bills.
Eric, what happens if the Dodgers and Astros meet up in the World Series again this year? They both have to lose technically, right? Because Baker and Roberts both chokes. Like how does MLB do this?
Well, first of all, I'd love to see, as much as I don't like the Astros, as much as I despise them, I would definitely be happy for Dusty Baker because anybody's deserving to win that. For the great person Dusty Baker is, he of all people, I'd be very happy if he finally won that elusive World Series ring to already cap off a fantastic career that will most likely put him in the Hall. And
definitely,
but you know, as far as the Dodgers go, I mean, you know, they just people are forgetting though that bullpen isn't as strong as it once was. There's no Kenley Jansen to lean on, so they're going to have that issue too. Plus, when you lose your ace pitcher, that is just devastating.
Yeah, they did bring in Martin though from the Cubs, who's a very solid pitcher. Trinan is coming back. I know Craig Kimbrell's had ups and downs this season. He's not the old Craig Kimbrell, but he is playoff proven World Series champion with Boston. It was not a bad bullpen. Plus, you could take some of the starting pitching that they have and kind of throw them into the bullpen as well, potentially. So the bullpen will be stronger come playoff time. And it's really the starting pitching.
Yeah, that's going to be the X factor. And how much does Clayton Kershaw really have left in the tank? I mean, he's not the Clayton Kershaw Cy Young Award winner every year. He's like he's probably about a number 3 starter, which not bad. I'm not saying
the question is though, can he give you 3 or 4 good starts come playoff time? Because if he does, they have a chance to win.
Even when Clayton Kershaw was in his prime, the guy would fold in the playoffs instantly. He would pitch bad, and Clayton Kershaw would get absolutely shellacked and maybe last 3 or 4 innings.
Very true. We'll move over to another team that at one point was considered a favorite. Still have pretty good odds if you look in Vegas, but they've been sliding, and that's the Yankees. Even with their 5-game winning streak last week, they are sliding still. Aroldis Chapman injured, Scott Efros injured, Luis Severino been injured, and Chapman hasn't even been effective when he was healthy. Efros was a big acquisition for the Yankees, and that's a big deal for them. It's a big loss. Severino placed on the 60-day injured list when it appeared he only needed 15 days. That's become a big situation because it appeared he just needed those 15 days. He's still not eligible to come back till mid-September. Montas has not pitched well. Even if they had Severino pitching in the bullpen, it would be a big difference right now. And the Yankees need all 3 of these guys down the stretch, not just to hold on to the division, but they need them healthy and pitching well if they want a chance to win in October, because Chapman's supposed to be a guy that you can rely on in the late innings. Efros was brought in to be that guy. And Severino right now is probably the 3rd starting pitcher in that rotation come playoff time. If he's healthy, you have Cole, Nestor, and Severino. And after that, I'm scared out of my mind. But those three guys are so important for the Yankees' success, even more so than Presley and Verlander, like we talked about with the Astros, Eric.
Well, fortunately, this next week we're going to see a lot of those guys come back, so it'll make things a little bit easier. Fortunately, you know, Clay Holmes is back, which, you know, it seems as even though they lost last night, he was effective in the inning that he did pitch. And I know Nestor was kind of more or less I want to say it was a phantom IL just to give him some rest, which, you know, they just did, you know, when he says pull groin, but when he's running around in the outfield, you know. I think that it's been rough down the stretch. Part of that is the bullpen has been eaten by injuries, and Efros was effective prior to getting hurt. He was at one point the closer of that team,
and he was excellent before the trade too. Excellent for the Cubs before coming to New York.
He's got like, you know, his ERA is in probably the middle 2s, and he's proven to be effective. I know Zach Britton, we made such a big deal of that video, but you know, he's going to be back, which I don't Not sure what we're going to get out of him because he hasn't pitched all year, but I am curious to see there. So a lot of guys are coming back, and I think once they get all their pieces back, I think we'll be in better shape. Because keep in mind though, this Yankee team in August was just depleted by injuries.
Oh yeah, aside from Miami, I believe they're the second worst team in baseball this month of August. I'm sure they can't wait for it to end. One thing to consider though, division's still up for grabs there. We'll move into that now. I'll talk about the Yankees because they're 7-up on the Rays going into tonight. These two teams play 6 times in the next 13 days. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but if the Rays take 5 of 6 of those games, even 4 of 6, but 5 of 6 of those games, suddenly we got a really tight race with 3+ weeks to go. So that the division's coming down to those games right then and there. So the Yankees won't be fully healthy for those games. They're going to have to find ways to scratch some out.
I mean, that's what it's all about, finding a way to win. That's what that's what baseball is. You got to figure out a way to win with what you have. But fortunately, they're going to have they're not going to have everybody back, but they'll have some key people back, which will make things better. Keep in mind, the Rays were really injured at one point too.
They still are. They're still without Wander Franco, their best player.
And then keep in mind too that the Blue Jays had their opportunity to go back up, but the Mets kind of had the same problem as well. They had, like the Yankees, they had a pretty sizable lead on the Atlanta Braves, and boom, and now their division lead has dwindled down to I think less than 3. So
yeah, we'll talk about that too later on. I do want to get Rick's thoughts on the Chapman and Severino Efros situation. The Yankees slide overall. He hasn't had his chance to kind of go at us over the past couple weeks, being on vacation. So I'll give him his opportunity here, and then I'll let you fight back, Eric.
Well, the Yankees have been stone cold. They've been struggling. I saw Aaron Boone's press conference where he slams his fist on the table, and you can tell how irritated he is and frustrated. And then Chapman with his infection from a tattoo. It's one of the most bizarre ways to get on the disabled list. But they need to get their act together. They better get better. I mean, August was a horrible, horrible month. I'll give it to you. They were injured, but they've not been playing good at all. And you want to talk about Dave Roberts being a choker? Aaron Boone is not exactly Connie Mack. So we'll see what happens with the Yankees when they get into the playoffs. So it's going to be an interesting race. They better beat Tampa because, all
they have to do is split. They have 6 games.
Yeah.
They split the 6.
They better win. They've been off. They've been awful. They got to get back. They haven't been struggling. They have been awful. And so we'll see what September goes. They better get their act together, be good. And like I said, I would love to see a Yankee-Dodger World Series. So we'll see what happens. But the Dodgers doing their part. Got to see what the Yankees do. We got to get their act together.
Definitely, Eric. Any rebuttal?
I mean, Rick does have a point. They were awful for all of August. I mean, they really were. Yes, they were hurt. But, as far as Chapman goes, I mean, it's just a summary of Chapman's season right there is his ineffectiveness. I mean, yes, he hasn't blown a save yet, but he's made a mess on the base paths and somehow has been able to come out with a save just because the Yankees defense has been stellar. I just don't think that I think Chapman, at this point, he's played himself out of New York. His contract's up at the end of the year. I don't think he has it anymore. And the Yankees clearly have their closer. Whether they got a kind of a situation where do they make Efros a long-term closer? Is Holmes the right guy going forward, or do they go and dip into free agency, grab themselves one, and call it a day?
Yeah, they also have some good arms in the minors too. I mean, I don't think he's ready for it yet, but Marinaccio has been excellent for the most part this year. So.
Ronnie M's been great. I mean, he's been a terrific middle guy. I think he's pretty good for high leverage 7th, 8th inning stuff. I wouldn't want to stick him in closer yet.
Certainly not yet. No, not at all.
But for what it's worth, he's been great down the stretch, and he's proven that he can be the high leverage guy. I mean, his ERA was $1.96 at one point.
Yeah, he's definitely been good, and they keep churning out these arms consistently, so that's definitely a positive for them moving forward. I mentioned Tampa with the Yankees, but other AL teams, Central, it's pretty much whoever wins the division is in, and nobody else is going to be able to squeeze in. They're just not good enough. Seattle isn't winning their division, but certainly have a nice path to a playoff spot. Probably of all the current wildcard teams, I have the most faith in them because of their schedule down the stretch and the weakness of their division. Not going to get back into the whole unbalanced thing. We already covered that earlier. But the Orioles and Jays are something I want to pay closer attention to, guys. Not only are the Orioles sticking around, but they currently have the best chance of anyone at catching the Toronto Blue Jays. They're going to face each other 7 times between now and September 17th. That gives the Orioles a chance to make up a lot of ground on the Jays, of course. And in between those series, look at Baltimore's schedule. Oakland, Boston, Washington. Very, very winnable games for the Baltimore Orioles. This team cannot be counted out, especially with their schedule. They finished the season with 3 more games against the Toronto Blue Jays. So if they can keep things close, anything is possible. They're about to call up Gunnar Henderson, who's one of the top prospects in baseball, to give their offense a little bit more thump. They might be calling him Grayson Rodriguez around that same time. He's one of the top pitching prospects in baseball. So they're going to be adding pieces without obviously being able to make trades. They have the schedule to do it. They control their own destiny with the Blue Jays, and they have an easy schedule. This is a Cinderella story, something really to keep an eye on. Again, Tampa involved here, but they're a bit out in front compared to the Jays and Orioles, and I think their sights are still on the Yankees. What do you think, Rick?
Orioles are the surprise team of the year. I thought they were going to be awful. I just thought that no, and they have a horrible, it just didn't look good for them. And for them to be doing this great is a surprise to me. I think it's a surprise to a lot of people. And they can make the Blue Jays very interesting. Blue Jays are playing a lot better now ever since they made a managerial change. So maybe that was good for them. I don't know. But Baltimore has been playing really great baseball. They've been one of the hottest teams in all of MLB. I still like the Blue Jays in this. I really do. I think they have a little bit more firepower in their lineup. But Baltimore's making it very, very interesting.
Hey, Luke, let me add a couple things here real quickly. Obviously, Trevor Hillstrom says McClanahan was scratched during warm-ups tonight, shoulder.
He was. That would be a very big loss if it's severe.
Also, a couple of score updates, too, worth mentioning here. The Tampa Bay Rays lead the Miami Marlins 5-0. That's at the top of the 6th score. And the Seattle Mariners 7, Tigers 0 into 3. So that's
no surprises there. Two good teams in the American League taking on a terrible team in the AL and a terrible team in the NL.
Right, and I'll be over at the Marlins game against the Tampa Bay Rays. So just thought I'd throw those scores out there. That those scores are hardly a surprise, but it just shows to show you what you guys are saying. You have a couple of good teams here that are certainly beating up on lesser opponents. And when you have an opportunity to go to the playoffs, these are games you really, I don't want to say they're gimmies, but you need to win them. Continue.
Yeah, something else to consider here, and I don't know, if it's something that's been talked about within the Tampa Bay organization, but you have this series versus Miami that you should be able to throw anyone out and win these games. You have the Yankees coming into town on the weekend. Maybe give McClanahan a few extra days and save him up for that Friday or Saturday start in a game that you really want to win when you don't really need him. If he's even a little sore now, it would make a lot more sense to be safe, start him against the Yankees, skip him against the Marlins.
I've been saying all year that watch out for the Rays. I really have, considering how well they develop players and Kevin Cash, you never count this team out. I was joking around with a colleague that, when I looked at the Dodgers series, the Dodgers, the way they go out there is they're the Macy's, okay, when it comes to players, and when it comes to the Rays, they're the Dollar General. So when you compare the payrolls of the two, but with all due respect, I think the Rays are, I don't know, do you call them a sleeper? I don't know. Let you guys continue. But I just thought there were a couple things that came in mind.
Not a sleeper because they are just won the division, but looking at the roster every year and wondering how they continue to win this many games certainly makes them a bit of a sleeper, certainly a head scratcher. Eric, your thoughts on the Orioles, the Jays, all the games they have left? Jays really started off well with their new manager, kind of fallen back down off a cliff. I mean, they were just swept by the Angels in Toronto. That's not a very good look for anybody, especially a team that's vying for a playoff spot.
I mean, number one, it came back to their pitching. Their pitching, their bullpen in particular has been a problem all year, except for Jordan Romano, who's, good closer, but who else do you have? And also, yeah, they have the offense, but man, you got to pitch to win in this league. and they just don't have it. I personally think that they'll ultimately edge out the Orioles just based on experience because they know how to do it. Right now, the Orioles are kind of in that phase of learning to win, which it's a great story, really is. I mean, going into the year, I knew that I thought they would improve because they have, Cedric Mullins right there, and before he was traded, Trey Mancini, they had some.
Yeah, well, 60 wins would have been, or 65 wins would have been a nice improvement for them.
Right, and they were always heading in the right direction. They were doing it right. Their farm system had been just churning guys like Noah Morrow. Yeah, they were losing, and they kind of became the joke of late night TV. But they had Santander, obviously Adley Rushman. The guy was supposed to be gold, and he is. But yeah, they always had the prospects, and it was just a hot lava bed of talent, and it was just not ready to show yet. And they've built a team that I think that has an opportunity to. Do I think they make it this year? No, but I still see them being very relevant in September. And
they have the schedule to do it, man. I mentioned they have 9 versus Toronto, Oakland, Boston, and Washington.
Easy cakewalk schedule. Cakewalk.
I mean, they can beat up on Oakland, they can beat Boston, they can beat up on Washington. If they took, I'm not saying they're going to. If they go 6-3 against the Blue Jays in those games, they leapfrog them. 5-4, they at least gain some ground. So it's wide open.
And Toronto, despite the offense that they have, they really aren't the team to really do it. Because I personally just, for some reason, they're just missing the it factor. I mean, yeah, Vlad Guerrero Jr. is great, and also they were
better last year. In my opinion.
And also they lost some pitching depth too to injuries. That's also a problem. But yeah, their biggest problem was they neglected the pen. That's one thing that they did was they neglected the pen. And personally, I think they'll get there just because of their offense. But I don't see them going anywhere because as soon as they get to that bullpen, they're going to get shellacked.
They're one of those teams, though, that's talented enough to run the table and go all the way to the World Series. They're also one of those teams that could get swept in that best of 3 or not even make it. That's what's so interesting about them because they're very talented. But
the thing about the Blue Jays, though, is they're the type of team too that can easily win 4 in a row, but they can also lose 4 in a row. They're a very bipolar team, which they're never consistent.
Even their great offense with all those big names, that offense is very inconsistent. There'll be a week where you can't get them out, and there'll be a week where maybe one of them is hitting, and that's not going to do it either.
Like Vlad, they got some all-stars on that team, and no doubt. I mean, Vlad Jr. is clearly as good as his dad, and he. But the thing about it is they're missing the it factor, and I just don't think they have it to really go all the way.
Yeah, Gausman is hit or miss. Manoah is fantastic, but Barrios has been a complete disaster. And if he doesn't turn it around, that's going to look like one of the worst contracts in Major League Baseball. If he doesn't turn it around in the next few seasons, they just extended him big time coming into the year.
It's not the first time the Blue Jays have handed out a bunch of bad contracts. Remember their quote unquote dream team that ended up not going to the playoffs, where they essentially became the Toronto Marlins.
Yeah, I remember those trades, definitely. Anything else on the American League, Scott or Rick?
No, I think you guys did a good job.
Yeah, I said, Toronto's very streaky, and they're missing bullpen, and they need a manager. I don't think they have any guidance there. They're just they should be winning more and more games. They should be one of the best teams right now with that offense, and they're a total mystery and a total question mark.
Yeah, definitely.
I think it goes a little deeper than the manager, to be truthful. I think unfortunately Charlie Montoya, he just had a horrible stretch where the team went 2-9 or 2-10 or whatever it was. It was 2-8, but and Toronto and Mark Shapiro felt as though that he needed to make a move, but really nothing's changed. So it's got to be more than just the manager, I think.
Yeah, the only thing I'll add to that, sometimes when you make a move to bring an interim guy, it's an immediate spark, but doesn't mean it's necessarily the long-term answer. So all you really
it was an immediate spark. They came on like gangbusters, and then suddenly went back to playing very mediocre baseball.
Yeah, I mean, unless you're the Philadelphia Phillies, that wasn't immediate spark. That was necessity. But I don't want to get into that and take two things off too much. But when you make a change in the middle of the year, you hope and pray that you got a new voice. Okay, you're playing for your jobs anyhow. Let's see what you can do. And sometimes those moves work out, sometimes they don't. You're gonna by the end of the year, though, guys, you're gonna have your fair share of managerial openings at the end of the year, regardless. Okay, how many of them lose the interim tag? Well, I don't know. We'll save that for a few future episodes.
There's a guy out there in Los Angeles with the Angels who's definitely going to lose his interim tag. I can tell you that. That is for sure. Subscribe to the South Florida Tribune on our YouTube channel. Visit www.southfloridatribune.com. Follow us on Twitter at Tribune South. To advertise, you can call 954-304-4941. Get the audio portion of the show on Spreaker, Spotify, Apple, Google, anywhere you get your podcast. Moving things over to the NL. And Scott, you mentioned the Phillies here. They're right in this 3-team race basically for the final 2 wild card spots. Phillies, Padres, Brewers. Padres still in a playoff spot. They're the most interesting of the teams because of all the moves they made for Hader and Soto and Bell. But their lead over the Brewers is 1.5 games. And the Brewers aren't a good team. Don't get me wrong. They're certainly nowhere near as good as the Padres on paper, but the Brewers division, it is weak outside of the Cardinals, and it gives them an opportunity to stick around, stay in this race. Padres could hold off Milwaukee. I expect them to, but they have started to fall behind the Phillies for the 5th spot. They were kind of back and forth for a little bit, bouncing up and down. Before last night's Phillies disaster, they blew a 7-run lead. It was a 2.5 game lead. Now it's down to 1.5, not insurmountable. But let me throw something your guys' way here. And I don't want to take anything away from the Cardinals because they're a very good team. But one could argue that being the 6th seed in the NL playoffs is better than being the 5th seed because no series in the playoffs is going to be easy. Don't get me wrong. But if I'm the Padres, I'd much rather go to St. Louis than Atlanta or New York and have to deal with either the world champions or Scherzer and DeGrom in a best of 3. That's all I'm going to say on it. I think that it wouldn't be the worst thing in the world for the Padres to end up as the 6th seed. Do they want to lose intentionally? No. But it might benefit them more. And I'm not saying the Cardinals is an easy out. They're a very good team as well. What do you think about this NL wildcard situation, Rick?
I actually think the Cardinals can beat the Padres in the playoffs, to be quite honest with you. I think the Padres.
So do I. I just think they're easier than the other two.
They're like the Toronto Blue Jays, a total mystery. Hader has been absolutely awful. This whole Tatis thing, I think, is really kind of threw him for a loop. And talk about bad contracts. There's one right there. I mean, my goodness. And so he needs to do some growing up. But I just don't understand the Padres. They have all the talent in the world. You think with Soto going there, they're gonna take it. And I thought they were gonna take it and really put a charge to the Dodgers, and they just haven't done that at all. And they have just been inconsistent. And so if they do go to the St. Louis, I think St. Louis will beat them in the playoffs, to be quite honest with you.
Yeah, St. Louis is a really good team. I mean, they're about to get Jack Flaherty back, it would appear. So Wainwright, Flaherty, Montgomery is a really nice 1, 2, 3. That would be your top 3 in that short series. And again, I'm not taking a single thing away from the St. Louis Cardinals. They're not going to be an easy out. They're a team that's good enough to go all the way.
Goldschmidt might win the Triple Crown. He's the MVP. He's phenomenal.
But as from a mental, psychological standpoint and on paper, I would say if I'm a team going on the road for a 3-game series, best of 3, I don't want to go take on the world champion Braves, who clearly know how to win in the playoffs. And I don't want to take my shot at beating DeGrom and Scherzer, because if you don't beat them both, you're in trouble.
Yeah.
So that's what it comes down to. If it was a best of 5 or a best of 7, I might not feel the same way. I probably would, but it wouldn't be as challenging of or daunting as a task, especially with the Mets. Now, it looks like it'll be the Mets. We'll talk about the Mets and the Braves shortly. But the Phillies, they're really interesting because we know they can hit. Great lineup. They just got Harper back. Amazing stuff. He's as good as it gets. He would have been my MVP choice if he didn't get hurt. He's that good of a player. He won it last year. Nola, Wheeler, fantastic. Syndergaard, good enough. Gibson, decent, I guess, to say the least. their bullpen, complete disaster. Even with the Robertson acquisition, Sir Anthony Dominguez has been good. The Phillies bullpen is weak. They're good enough to make the playoffs, and they probably will make the playoffs. But they're the team I'd like to face in the playoffs. They're the first team that's going to go. They might be the worst of all the playoffs teams, them and probably Cleveland at this point right now. But Cleveland at least has the pitching, whereas Philly doesn't. Good pitching can shut down the Phillies. So that's kind of where I'm at with that. What do you think, Rick?
Yeah, the Phillies, I mean, they, you talk about a managerial change in the midseason that's really worked out for them. Robbie Thompson should get some votes for NL Manager of the Year, what he's done, because they were a team that was going to run through everything, and they didn't do well with a great manager, Joe Girardi, who I still think is a great manager, and I think he will manage again in Major League Baseball. But they have just taken – they played a lot better, but their Achilles heel is that bullpen. And if they can get that bullpen during the offseason, get some arms, get some good players, and just revamp it, watch out for them next season. I think they could be in a healthy Bryce Harper, and they are a good team. It's just this year they got up to such a horrible start. And if they do make the playoffs, yeah, I agree. I don't think they're going to go very far because their bullpen is weak. But next year, I think they'll be good.
Still.
Well,
you got to go out there and add probably 2 bullpen arms. Syndergaard's going to be free agent. I don't see them bringing him back, but they could go out there and get another SP3, SP4 type. As long as they have Wheeler and Nola and that offense, they're going to be competitive.
They thought they had somebody, though, in Corey Knebel. It's unfortunately that his injury situation.
But that's always been Corey Knebel.
Well, that's true.
If they were relying on him to be healthy all season, that's a mistake.
That's true.
Its own right.
So then so my question to you is this, Lou, okay? You have a guy like Corey Knebel who's injury prone, but yet Dave Dombrowski brings him in. So I'm with you all the way.
You want to know why, though? That just goes back to what we talked about in April or even before the season began.
Right.
It comes down to bad decision-making. You didn't need Nicholas Castellanos. I like Castellanos. I think he's a great hitter, and he's really come on lately. Use that money on Kenley Jansen. Trade for Craig Kimbrell. Go out there and address what you have to address in the bullpen. Don't go out there and add another defensive liability in the outfield. And if the Phillies don't make the playoffs, I'm sure they will. And if they go out early and it's because of their bullpen, that's what it will come down to yet again for them. A mistake, mismanagement of the funds, because they clearly have the money. They spent big time, but they went out and they added to an already strong offense rather than adding to the glaring hole that any person sitting at home wanting to play general manager could have seen.
Oh, no, listen, I got news for you, Lou. I agree with you 1,000%. The one thing we've always talked about, okay, it isn't how much money you spend, it's how wisely you spend it, okay? We all know full well you got the largest payroll on the planet. If you're not spending it in the right places, guess what? Only one team's going to win a World Series while the other 29 aren't going to do it. So everything that we've talked about, Lou and Rick, during the course of the year has been very consistent. And you're right. I definitely think that they should have gone out there and fortified their bullpen. There's no question about that. So I'm not debating it. In fact, if anything, I'm agreeing with you. And let's face it, though, where the Phillies play is a hitter's ballpark anyhow. So with all due respect, you're darned if you do, darned if you don't, but what are you going to do? It's just how it goes. And in terms of the additions and subtractions, bringing Bryce Harper back now is like a trade deadline acquisition because he's getting healthy.
Like the Mets with bringing back DeGrom. They bring DeGrom back, and it's like making a huge acquisition and bigger acquisition than you could possibly make. What do you guys think's up with the Padres, though? I mean, I know that Tatis Jr. news must have hurt, but I mean, they're already a good team. They bring in Soto, they bring in Bell, and then all of a sudden the pitching falls apart. And the offense is almost worse with Soto and Bell. Eric, good to have you back. What's the deal with the Padres? I mean, you should be blowing the Brewers away by now. They should be ahead of the Phillies. They should be closer to where the Braves are at, yet they're sitting there almost asking for the Brewers to pull off a miracle.
Well, problem number one, the problem is Hader was falling apart to begin with. We kind of saw it a little bit in Milwaukee, not a terrible amount, but a little bit. He was starting to fall apart in Milwaukee. Number 2, Tatis Jr. was out, which which he had been out for the longest time. So that wasn't new. They made it this
No,
far.
I think it was more of a gut punch because they thought they were going to get him back.
Yeah.
Well, when the steroids thing happened, that kind of threw him off, or whatever you want to call it. That threw him off. I think number 2 is, I just don't think the lineup has really gelled. I think they were anticipating having Tatis Jr. back in the lineup along with Soto and Manny Machado, and obviously Jake Cronenworth, and make that dynamic, that meaty middle of the lineup where they'd be blasting balls night in and night out. But that just hasn't happened. I think part of it too is people are forgetting this team struggles in the pitching department. That people seem to forget that
they didn't, though. They weren't doing that. Musgrove was looking like a Cy Young candidate. Darvish was pitching well. I mean, they had pretty good starting pitching, and then all of a sudden, the bad Darvish came out. Musgrove completely fell off a cliff ever since he got that extension, probably worn down. Blake Snell was probably been one of their better pitchers over the last month, and he got blasted his last time out versus the Guardians. So they're pitching that plus Hader. I mean, they traded so much depth just to get Hader, and Hader hasn't been able to do a thing for them.
Well,
so
here's the thing.
Everything's falling apart.
Well, here's the thing. I wasn't saying Musgrove because Musgrove was looking like a Cy Young candidate, but Darvish, you can't really trust the guy because number 1, yes, he was doing well in the beginning of the year, and yes, Darvish seemed to do well, but I still didn't trust the guy because I've seen what happens. The guy is very night and day when he pitches, and odds are, and they also traded a proven closer that they had in Taylor Rogers, who was having a decent year for them. Which I don't.
He was converting saves. I mean, forget about the ERA and the WHIP for a moment. For all those fancy baseball players out there, he was killing them. But in terms of closing out games and getting saves, he was doing just fine.
Okay, every closer is going to have an outing where they get absolutely shellacked. It happened. It even happened to Mariano Rivera multiple times. Like we've seen Ugly Mo happen too. But Taylor Rogers was still getting it done for them. I mean, they can. Yeah, but keep in mind, Hader wasn't as good as he was last year. Hader was just I think personally it was dead arm. Through
June, didn't he have like a 0 ERA or something, or like a 1 ERA? And then
he was red hot.
Yeah, and then now it's like 6.
Yeah, it was in July July is when it really started to fall apart. Because first few months of the year he was doing Josh Hader things, being that guy. I mean, he was obviously that closer, but right now, I just think that his arm finally died. I mean, his arm had been electric for a long, long, long time. And then his arm finally dies. And voila, here we are. But, that was just the case with them. But, but I never really trusted their pitching 100% because, they just, even last year, their pitching let them down. And even though they had Blake Snell last year, he let them down. That's why I was like, they have bats, but man, their pitching will let them down. That's been their biggest problem. That's why the Brewers, who are I'll say this, the Padres are weak pitching wise, or as the Brewers are weak hitting wise. I will say that between those two teams.
If you combine the two teams, they might be World Series
possibly.
Yeah,
possibly. And then also it's also the same thing with the Brewers and the Cardinals. The Brewers are weak hitting wise as the Cardinals, although they've been pitching a lot better. The Cardinals are weak bullpen wise, although it's been better. I'm going to say that it's gotten a lot better. It's not as bad as people make it out to be. But
they had a lot of issues at the back end of their rotation for a while too. Tons of injuries. But getting Flaherty back possibly on the weekend. Obviously, our boy Montgomery's been fantastic, although he didn't fare so well against the Braves.
He's pitching at a pitcher. Well, he was due, and he's pitching in a very pitcher-friendly ballpark.
In a very pitcher-friendly division.
Yes. Yeah. Where the offenses in that division are weak. So if I'm expecting a guy who comes over from New York to just absolutely just dice up that entire lineup.
Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, the Cardinals, interesting team. And you know what's really funny, and I haven't heard anyone really talking about it. The Padres collapsed last year, and we all thought, okay, well, Bob Melvin, they won't collapse again. If we didn't have the additional playoff spot this year, they'd be in the middle of their collapse again. They wouldn't be in a playoff spot.
No,
they would collapse once again because the fact of the matter remains is they can't get it done. And obviously last year, I'd probably say Fernando Tatis Jr.'s ego kind of got the best of him toward the end of the year. And, obviously there's that glorified incident in the clubhouse where Manny Machado is just laying into Tatis Jr., knowing the state of that
funny
club.
because Manny used to be just like that when he was a youngster with the Orioles. He was just as hot-headed and just as egocentric.
Well, that keep in mind though that those Oriole teams had some veterans on there, so it was a little easier to do that. Meanwhile, Manny's got to be the dad of that clubhouse because that team is much younger, and he's the only.
They should have traded Hosmer, man. Hosmer was Papa Haas, and
yeah, he's
so
gone.
that's why. I mean, Manny's fine now. I mean,
he's fine now, and he's a hell of a player.
And he was always that way. But there's a difference between that clubhouse. I mean, yeah, Manny had his incidents in Baltimore, but they were never to the degree that the Padres were. Because the Orioles could just, it would happen and the Orioles would address it and Manny would address it and they would move on. Thing about it is Fernando Tatis Jr. hasn't really addressed it. And I'm not even sure if I should accept his apology.
Yeah. Well, his excuse for ringworm getting is the most idiotic thing.
The infamous ringworm.
And for Pedro Martinez to come out and defend him, it's like, be quiet, Pedro. I mean, he made a mistake. He got caught. Be a man. And I think what's wrong with the Padres, they're just very immature. I think they're just very young. I think they're very arrogant.
I almost feel like they just expected things to be handed to them because they're so talented.
Yeah, that's the problem.
Have to play the games.
I think Slam Diego finally got to them where they were expecting to be this team that just is absolutely invincible, dynasty in the making. But what they don't realize is, when you do that, when you decide to flash that out, you've painted there is a red X on your behind. You have to go out and prove to those people that you can handle it. And so far they haven't. It's the reason why Jace Tigler lost his job is because he lost control of that clubhouse.
They remind me of the Mets when they had Bobby Bonilla and Eddie Murray and Vince Coleman and Jeff Torborg, and they were terrible. Bobby Bonilla had a horrible batting average at Shea Stadium, and he was coming back home, and we thought,
he was working with his agent all the way back then. It's like, I'm just going to keep sucking until they give me $1 million.
And they were terrible, but on paper they look great, and that's what the Padres remind me of. On paper they look good, but I just think they're so immature. They're young, they're arrogant, and they want everything handed to them. And like Tatis Jr., he's such a crybaby, and he's really let that team down big time. And they give him this big old monster contract, and he got himself in a motorcycle accident before that. And so they just need to get some more veterans in there and get rid of Hosmer. I think he was like a glue there. And we were so focused on him not hitting anymore, but his presence there really was an influence, and I think losing that maturity factor and that veteran
they
factor,
almost had a
blessing
blessing in disguise by Washington not wanting Hosmer. They should have taken that and kept him.
Instead, they gave him the Boston, which to a non-contending Boston team who thought they could still be it and made moves that made zero sense.
Because Hosmer was the leader of the Royals teams when he was like in his early 20s.
Yeah,
that team was a natural
leader. Yeah, he's a natural leader. I mean, I love the move when they made that move because I thought even if he declines playing-wise and like performance-wise, that's a guy that could bring a clubhouse together and take you deep into the playoffs. Keep in mind,
though, that Royals team was not egocentric. They were the working man's team.
Blue-collar team.
They made it to the World Series the first year and lost, although they put up a heck of a fight against San Francisco.
90 feet away from going to from tying the game in Game 7.
And then next year, and then the following year, it was World Series or bust. They remained focused on that all season long. They sprinted through the playoffs, and then they finally got their ring. That team was just focused,
and they beat a good Mets team because that was when Harvey and Syndergaard were both really good.
And also,
that was a really good
Daniel Murphy became good out of nowhere.
Yeah. That was a good Mets team that they beat
before the Cubs overpaid them. But the thing is though, this team is not focused. They are trying to be invincible just because they happen to play in California. This team, it was all up about their Grand Slam Diego image of 2020. They just are not focused. That's been their biggest problem, is they're just caught up in the image that baseball created for them, which was Slam Diego, which I'll admit that was catchy, it was cool, it was fun to watch. It gave me something to smile about during an otherwise dreg of a year. But this team now, I mean, when the lights got bright and when people were actually at the ballpark to see them perform, and basically some people called them the baseball version of the Showtime Lakers.
Yeah.
But they just
Ridiculous.
Tatis Jr. is just caught up in his head. Machado is trying to keep it together, which you got to give the guy credit. He's trying to keep that clubhouse together. But meanwhile, that clubhouse splintered over the midnote. Tatis Jr. clearly he's got some growing up to do, especially when you decide to ride a motorcycle and get hurt when the team made a massive investment in you. I'm also talking to you, Kellen Winslow Jr., but you have other issues.
Didn't Chris Sale also do that?
No, that was a bicycle.
That's even worse.
I know, but
And
Chris
he
Sale
destroys locker rooms too.
Well, Chris Sale had
Versus
some injuries
jerseys.
before that, but Chris Sale had some other injuries before that. Before the bike thing happened, the bike thing happened while he was on the IL, and he made it worse. But but back to it, Tatis Jr. You got hurt somewhat of last year, but the fact of the matter is, when you decide to ride a motorcycle, when this team has over $300+ million invested in you, it kind of shows you. That this team is.
I feel like they should put an ankle bracelet on Fernando Tatis Jr. and just be able to monitor him
or they could do what they did back in the day when the coaches of, I think, Green Bay and Atlanta would have these undercover guys to see what Brett Favre was up to.
Or have a curfew. They need to have like a curfew on these guys because they just like.
Well, Matt Bush did.
They might just need a babysitter for him.
They're just immature and they're arrogant. And they're like, we're in San Diego. We play one of the most beautiful ballparks.
Think about it. They're already $300 million invested in. What's another like $50,000 a year to pay a babysitter? If I'm San Diego right now, I'm literally going into Tatis Jr. and his agent. Tatis Jr. and his agent saying, and finding a way to figure out like what needs to happen next in order to get out of that contract. Because I'm 100% sure if a player's being stupid, they can do that. I'm sure they could find ways. Didn't the Yankees find a way to not pay A-Rod?
Well, let me just interject here a little bit. There's generally clauses in contracts that, the fine print, you'd have to probably do that. Whether they would or not, it's another story. I've watched you guys, and it's been so fun watching the three y'all go back and forth. And I just want to say this one. First of all, okay, you can't put a big enough price tag about having a leader in a clubhouse, number one. You really can't. I think that's what the San Diego Padres have lacked, as you guys have stayed with Eric Hosmer. I do want to interject one thing about the Brewers for a moment, and I'll get back on the Padres subject for a moment.
Is it about Craig Counsell?
No, actually, it really isn't.
Wow, I'm surprised. You love that guy.
I do.
Craig too, actually, for that matter.
I do, but here's my point, okay? When you talk about the Josh Hader situation, it does befuddle me. But it kind of reminds me a little bit about Bill Belichick, that the Brewers knew something ahead of time that we didn't know and got rid of him a year before they had to. And the Patriot way is let's get rid of somebody before they go really downhill, and they were able to make that shrewd trade.
Kind of missed that train with Brady, though.
Yeah, but we all know how that worked out. So I don't want to.
It wasn't the first time too. They missed it with Ty Law too before
Right.
Brady.
But my point is that the Brewers knew what they were doing when they let Hader go, and obviously you guys made some excellent points about the return on investment for the Brewers. So now will everybody say that the clubhouse and the Brewers is a little deflated because you traded a high-profile guy to San Diego? There could be a theory to that, but the reality is the Brewers knew that it was time to get out of the Hader situation before it got uglier. And the biggest problem you have with Major League Baseball is you do have a lot of long-term contracts that go badly. And, we can devote an entire show to this if you want. But you're right. And
it's also possible, Scott, that they knew they'd be chasing the Padres and figured they'd help their own cause by giving a damaged pitcher.
True. Well, you never know. I mean, you have your regular show. We know how thorough you are with it. I wouldn't rule out any school of thought with anything that you're talking about. But to remember, the one thing that we can't lose sight of is the Padres made that massive deal with the Washington Nationals that we thought was a game changer. And we still have another 30 days to see how some of that plays out. I saw the Marlins play the Padres competitive over at Lone Depot Park. And I asked Don Mattingly, before the game, you guys seem to play them pretty competitively. and they did when they were in San Diego. Again, right now things have changed. Jesus Aguilar, who knows where he's going to wind up, but that'll be for another time. We still have another day or so, whether he's an impact bat later on down the road. TBD on that. But I guess my point, getting back to San Diego, is you guys are so right. You got to have a good leader in the clubhouse. And, a leader in the clubhouse doesn't have to be a 300 average with a slash line of about 30 home runs, 100 RBIs. Okay, give me a good leader in the clubhouse with a 220 average that has a 400 mentality average-wise to keep it all glued together. And I've been around the game long enough to know what, I hate to get off too much topic, but I will go to the NBA for this analogy, guys, okay? When you had the bad boys of Chuck Daly, okay, these players governed themselves in the locker room to make sure nobody got off track. You had Chuck Daly doing what he had to do to manipulate the minutes, but when you have Isaiah Thomas, Bill Laimbeer, and all these other guys making sure the problem children don't get in the way, you had that leadership, and leadership is priceless. That's the only reason I brought this analogy up. Yes, my voice has been preserved very well. Thank you very much, Lou, for allowing me to do that. But every now and then, though, you guys bring up such intelligent points that it's so easy for me to come up with examples that validate what you guys have already talked about. And you've given me a wealth of those tonight. Continue on.
Yeah, I will say this, though, and this has to do with the Yankees. And part of it was, yes, Derek Jeter's leadership is obviously really good. But after 2004, that locker room was splintered, and Derek Jeter himself, along with the rest of the core four, couldn't keep it together. So what do they do in 2009? They go out and grab guys who can police a locker room, like CC Sabathia, and also AJ, and also Mark Teixeira, having multiple leaders in that locker room.
Well, also bringing in Burnett and Swisher, who are like jokesters but keep things light. So you have the combination of the Yankees business way. You have the policemen. You got the dudes that are chill, want to have fun, and it was the perfect combination. And that's sometimes what you need.
I'll argue saying A-Rod really could have done more in that clubhouse, but because obviously guys were chasing after milestones.
We know that A-Rod is a very selfish player.
He's all about A-Rod. A-Rod is A-Rod, and he always will be.
Just ask Joe Torre. Joe Torre had a lot to say about A-Rod, which it's obvious that Torre does.
By the way, that whole A-Rod situation happened from an injury as well. Aaron Boone was expected to be back as the third baseman for the Yankees in 2004 after that big home run. Hurt himself playing basketball or something. The Yankees moved in, made the trade for Alex Rodriguez, and the rest writes itself.
Well, give Boone credit though. He was at least honest about the situation when everybody would just find a way.
I have no issues with Aaron Boone in the media. I've always said he handles it very well. Back to when he was a player. My problem with Aaron Boone is what he does on the field or in the dugout. But we'll save that for another time.
So let me ask you guys a question. Just want to make sure we put a wrap on this bad boy. I know, Lou, you've done a magnificent job with everything that's important. And for a lot of you folks that are watching or listening here, you certainly have a lot of good information as we go down the pennant. Any closing thoughts about Rick real quickly on all the topics that we discussed? I'll go around the horn, and then I want to close the show out with Willie Mays. Go ahead, Rick. Lead it off.
I think it went great. I love the gelling. I love how we just talked about things and kind of like the psychology of everything, like the Padres, because I think the Padres just need some growing up to do, and hopefully they'll address the issues they have, but they need some leadership there. But overall, it's been a great show.
All right, Eric, some thoughts.
Well, apologies for the audience and everyone else here.
It's okay. Move on.
But odds are, yes, the Padres have a splintering locker room. Something's got to be done about it. The Brewers, love or hate the trade just because it's Josh Hader, but the fact of the matter remains, the Brewers got him out before this thing just completely caboodled over.
Okay, Lou, some thoughts.
I just want to say that really excited to see what happens with the Baltimore Orioles, and hoping that the Yankees can at least split the 6 games with Tampa, and Mets Braves going to be an exciting race down the stretch as well.
All right, I'll just make 2 comments. Number one, Rick, I'm glad you had your opportunity to call that we have a new hashtag called the Oakland Pathetics. Very good stuff, okay? I'll have to remember that one. All right, I want to close the show on this note here, okay, and that's this. Willie Mays had an opportunity to have his number retired by the New York Mets. And what I like about the move is, first of all, many years ago when Hank Aaron played for the Milwaukee Braves, he had his number and finished career with the Milwaukee Brewers. As a result, he started in one town and wound up in another. Same holds true with Willie Mays. Started off with the New York Giants, landed with the New York Mets. I think what I like about what we saw in both instances is both players started their career in the city and they ended their career in the city. And I think it was a really classy move by the New York Mets to retire Willie Mays' jersey. I don't even care if he would have hit 33 his final year getting the World Series. It had nothing to do with it. Willie Mays, to me, is as much of New York as he was to San Francisco, as much as Hank Aaron was to Milwaukee with the Braves as he was to Atlanta. So to be able to see Willie Mays and Hank Aaron, retire in the cities that they started from, to me, is a tribute to what baseball history is all about. And kudos to Milwaukee, New York, San Francisco, as well as New York, that you are able to connect Willie Mays and Hank Aaron together. So for all you Mets fans who are out there paying attention, I am so glad that this move was done, especially while Willie Mays was alive, to know whether he can see it or not, because I understand, he's dealing with some vision issues, but I am so glad that this man can see that his number was retired with the Mets. I believe he played there, I believe, in 73, if I remember right.
Yes,
and I don't know, I think it was part of that World Series. I don't know if he played or not. And it's not even material regardless. But he at least finished his career in the city that it started. Same holds true with Hank Aaron, where he started as well. So hats off to you Mets out there. That was a very classy act. And when I saw that, there was no way I was going to leave that out of this show. All I can tell you, one other closing thought is I am so glad to have my guys here back together, all of them, Rick, Eric, and Lou. You make me feel like a father watching his kids go out there having a ball. And for me to keep quiet and say as little as I have in this show, you know what? When you have the supporting cast that I have, it's a whole lot easier for me to sit back and enjoy it and watching you guys talk baseball, bringing up points I would like to do, but hearing them from another standpoint. So, folks, I do the best I can to come up with the best crew that I can. And everybody that works on our network does an incredible job. I won't miss any names, but I got three in front of them. If you're watching here on the South Florida Tribune YouTube channel, you got it. Rick Curdy, Eric Katz, Lou Landers, three of the best in the business, as well as the other ones that appear. I'm proud of each and every one of you. You give me everything you've got, and that's all I ask anybody to do when they appear on the show. Give me everything you got. Put your heart, your passion, your soul, your intelligence, and I know there's no way we can fail. So I'm proud of each of you guys. I really don't have a lot more to say, except, Rick, why don't you let everybody know how they can get a hold of you?
You can find me on my website at www.charlottebats.com. We have a petition on there. Go on there and sign it to bring Major League Baseball to Charlotte, North Carolina. I'm also on Facebook as well, again, at Charlotte Bats Baseball. Charlotte MLB. I'm on Twitter, Charlotte Bats Baseball. Instagram at Charlotte Bats. And I'm also on LinkedIn under Rick Curdy. And if you want to contact me, my email address is cltbatsbaseball@gmail.com.
Eric, go ahead.
You can find me on Twitter at Sports Team News, and I also write about everything baseball at bellyupsports.com.
Go on, Lou.
Find me at drroto.com, where I am the MLB and Fantasy Baseball Director of Content, Sirius XM, Sports Byline USA. All my podcasts, just search Lou Landers on Apple or Spotify, and all my different stuff will come up. And of course, here on this show, and find me on Twitter at Landers Talks, like it says right here. I'm moving my mouse over it, but you guys can't see that.
All right, well, I'll go ahead and give you the Cliff Notes version. www.southfloridatribune.com is a website. At Tribune South is Twitter. Please subscribe to the South Florida Tribune YouTube channel. One kudos I want to provide out there, as I do on every show. And that goes to Candy Ebling, who does a remarkable job, not only putting the content as well as the broadcast stuff, but you know what? She's going to be getting a little bit more airtime coming up as well. So without Candy Ebling, we don't have the platform that we have out there as well. So you guys were fantastic as always. I guess I don't expect anything less out of you guys anyway. So I want to thank everybody for joining us on this edition of 108 Stitches Baseball Talk. On behalf of Rick Curdy, Eric Katz, and Lou Landers, my name is Scott Morganroth, the Motor City Madmouth. Thank you for joining us, and we will catch you the next time. Everybody go out there, be safe. COVID-19 still out there. Do the best you can to make the necessary precautions to be safe, because we don't want to take this thing for granted in any way, shape, or form. Good night, everybody, and thank you very much for joining us. Bye-bye now.
Good night.